Hello, welcome back with Mrs. Struble. In this video, we're going to discuss how to find the slope of a line given a graph or 2 points. So let's get started. In order to understand how to find slope, we have to first understand what it is. Now slope, the long story definition here is it's a ratio of the change in y, which we also call the rise, to the change in an x value, which is called the run, between 2 points on a line. In other words, it's just a measure that represents our steepness at that section of any given line. Now, for our purposes, we're going to focus on straight lines, but really you can find the slope of any line. Okay? Move that down there. Some ways that we can label or redefine slope are as follows. So slope is also labeled as m. Why? I'm really not sure. I'm hoping somebody can help me find that out. But m is understood as slope, which is equal to what we call the rise over the run. We're going to use this more when we talk about graphs, okay, when we're given a graph. So hang on to that thought. Rise over run is also equal to slope, which is equal to our change in a y value over our change in x value, which basically runs into, hey, the definition is the ratio of change in y to change in x. How we do that using 2 points is noted by this equation. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. It's really not as difficult as it looks here, guys. Basically, all we're doing is we're taking those 2 points, we're subtracting or finding the difference of the y values, and then we're finding the difference of the x values. The only thing we need to be cautious of here is the first y we use needs to correlate with the first x we use, and we'll again get into that. Another way this might be written, or you might see this written, is delta y over delta x, which also is just a shorthand, guys. It basically means change in y over the change in x. Okay, so all of these 5 different ways to represent slope, there you go. So here are the basic steps we're going to use. Now these kind of vary depending on 1 or 2 things, but in order to find slope, first we have to have 2 solutions on the graph. Whether we're given it in points or we find it ourselves on the graphs, we need 2 points or 2 solutions on the graph. Then we're going to take the y values and we're going to find the change in the y values. Or if we're given a graph, we'll find the rise. It's the same thing. Step 3, we're going to find the run. In other words, we're going to find the change in the x values from those 2 points, from one point to the next. Step 4, easy peasy. We're going to take what we found in step 2 and 3. We're going to write it as a fraction and simplify. Let's get some practice in. All right, we have 2 graphs here, and we're asked to find the slope of these lines. When we have a graph, in order to calculate slope, the easiest thing to use is the rise over run, which we had mentioned before. So we're going to use the rise over run method. And what this basically means is the rise, how did it go up or down, versus how did the graph go left or right from one point to the next? How did it change or move? So we have our 2 points on this first line here. That's where I'm at. 1, 2, okay. Let's find the rise. We're going to start with the leftmost point, which would be -3, -1 here. And we're going to work our way as if this grid was city blocks. And we're going to ask ourselves, how many blocks do we need to go up, which is a positive value going north or going up on the coordinate system. And that answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to We just found the rise. Okay? So the rise is equal to 5. Now we're going to find the run. So from that point, how many blocks or units did we move to the right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The answer is 6. Our slope, therefore, is 5, 6. That is simplified. There you go. Okay. Going to letter B, going to B. Once again, we're given 2 points, so why not use them? If we're not given 2 points, we can always locate our point of our own. Word of the wise, make sure you are locating a point that is, in fact, on an intersection of the coordinates. Because if you try and like do this point, for instance, we don't know what that exact value is there. Okay, so find a point that is actually on the intersection. But here, we don't have to worry about that. They give it to us. Let's use these. Okay. Starting from the leftmost point, we're going to find the rise. Okay. The rise is how we move from left or up or down, and in order to get to the second point, in this case, we're going to move downward. Downward is a negative action. We're moving down 3 blocks. So our rise is a -3. Then we're going to ask ourselves, how many blocks did we run? We're going to run 2 blocks to the right. Okay. So our slope would be -3/2. Again, we're putting them over each other and simplifying. -3/2 is a simplified form. Yes, it's improper. I know you may have been conditioned to write it as -1.5, but for the purposes of graphing and working with linear equations, I beg you, you do not always have to follow the rules right away, okay? In this particular case, it works for us best to leave it in this format. So that's in fact what we're going to do. Now that we've practiced using the graphs in order to find slope, working with the rise over run, we're going to use these same graphs, and I'm going to show you how we use the equation using the points only. Okay? So for A, we were given 2 points, 3, 4, and -3, -1. I'm coming over here. I'm going to go ahead and write down B was -1, 1, and 1, -2. Now, honestly, it doesn't matter what order you're given these points in. You can use the equation whether you're given the leftmost point first or the rightmost point first. It doesn't matter which one comes first in this case. What does matter is if I choose to start with 3, 4, the point 3, 4, I need to start with 3, 4 every single time. So when I go to do my subtraction, again, the fancy looking equation right here, all it means is we're going to take the 2 y values and we're going to take one minus the other. So in this case, we're going to take 4 minus -1. And then we're going to take the x values and we're going to do the same thing. I started with the 4, which means I have to start with its corresponding 3 for the denominator. So it's 3 minus -3. So 3 minus -3. Okay. Well, we see a couple double negatives. That equals positive. We end up with a slope of 5, 6. And who would have thought? That's what we got before, isn't it? Okay. So there you go. Beauty of math, guys. Beauty of math. Always more than one way. Let's go on to B, see if it truly works. Let's find slope. Once again, we start with our y values. I'm going to just start with the first point there is. I'm going to take 1 minus -2. 1 minus -2. Make sure you're getting that in there correctly. And then we're going to do our x values, and -1 minus 1. Simplify this out with double negative. We end up with 3 on top and then a negative 2. Simplified form, we do not write 3 over negative 2, okay? We just don't write it. We pull out the negative. We pull the negative out front. It's negative 3/2. And what do you know? That's what we got before, isn't it? Okay, so there you go. That is how you graph, or excuse me, so there you go. That is how you find slope, whether you're given a graph or simply just 2 points, okay? Now, there's always a hiccup, right? What about horizontal and vertical lines? Well, that gets a little more tricky. So let's try the rise over run since we're given the graphs to figure this out. Okay. From one point to the next on this horizontal line, how many units are we rising or falling? In other words, how many units are we going up or down? And the answer is 0 there. How many units are we going left to right? And if you take a look, we're going 7. So our slope is 0 over 7. Simplify that, 0 divided by 7. That's just 0. So our slope here would equal 0. Let's find our slope over here. Again, rise over run. And it doesn't really matter what point we start with. That's what we found out, as long as we make sure if we have a negative, that is in place. So I'm going to go ahead and start right here with 4, 2. Rise. How many are we rising? We're going to rise up 4 units. How many are we running? We're not running anywhere. Okay? We're not going anywhere. We're just going up 4. I know it's tempting to say 0 here, but think about it. Division says 4 divided by 0. What number times 0 equals 4? And, well, there isn't any, at least that we know of. That's why we say you cannot be sure that none exists. But as far as we know, as far as our definition of division is concerned, there is no truly defined answer here. So we call vertical lines, the slope of any vertical line, we call that to be undefined. Okay? All right. So here we go in a nutshell. 4 basic types of slope. We've got our positive slope, which looks like it's going uphill. We've got our negative slope, looks like it's going downhill. Okay? That's a negative number, positive number. Then we got a 0. That's our horizontal line. And an undefined slope, that's our vertical line. Okay? 4 different types of slope. Now, before I let you guys go here, just a little tidbit of information. I want you to notice that parallel lines actually have the same slope. They change at the same exact rate. They change consistently at the same exact rate. Okay? Which is why they never intersect, because they're constantly changing at the same pace. So, parallel lines have the same slope. All vertical lines are parallel to each other. All horizontal lines are parallel to each other. That's pretty cool tidbit if you ask me. All right. Now, your turn. Why don't you pause the video, give these 4 a shot, and then I'll be back with the answers. All right, here we go. Let's see how you did. In these 4 examples, you had practice with all 4 types of slope. The first one was that negative slope. It was negative 1/5. The second one, that was that positive slope we were talking about going uphill. That slope was 1/3. Okay. Number 3 was actually, guys, it was just a horizontal line. The slope was 0. And number 4, that was a vertical line. That was an undefined slope. So how'd you do? Hopefully you did good. I really appreciate you guys joining me today. And as we discovered how to find slope of a line. Till next time, I'm Mrs. Struble with Struble Math. Bye, guys.